I'm Sister Jayanti from the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University.
Okay, right on. And what brought you to Cancun?
We're very interested in the whole subject of how consciousness impacts everything that we do in the world. And so climate change obviously is a major feature of life today. We're seeing how London has unseasonable snow. I was in India the week before. We were having monsoon rains in November, and here they say that the cold winds are blowing, and so it's become cold in Mexico. In North Mexico it's -10, which has never happened, and so it's a reality of life. And so we're interested to make people aware of the link between our thoughts, our actions, and the effect that it has on nature and the whole of the planet. And we're affiliated to the United Nations as an NGO, but with general consultative status with ECOSOC. And so we have the privilege of making contributions to such events.
Oh, fabulous. And that? Better if I'm on the same island.
Is that why you're doing this?
Yeah, that's
sorry.
It might,
sorry.
Sorry if it's a little weird, but it's easier for me to do that than to crouch down. In terms of what's happening on the planet, you know, we're seeing a lot of inequality between the developed world and the developing world. It seems like what's happening is totally counter to a lot of to most spiritual faiths out there. How do you think the spiritual community or faith can help turn that around?
What's been happening is that when we've been meeting people both from the general public, the non-governmental people, as well as any people from the governmental delegations, and we get to meet both, when you explain to them that human actions actually don't just happen just like that, but human actions begin firstly with the mind. So for example, greed, and you see the connection between consumerism, materialism, and what's happening to the climate, and so all of these things are connected. And so what we're doing is making people aware of this inner connection with the outside situation. And so never mind whether governments reach an agreement or don't, but my personal contribution to climate change is that I should be able to simplify my life. I should be able to have pure thoughts, good, clean thoughts. Cleaning the environment out there will happen when I can clean the environment inside. And so when I have thoughts that are free from ego and anger and violence and aggression and greed, then my life can be one in which I make a positive contribution to the world around me.
In terms of you know, major problems the world is facing, what do you think is the biggest issue we're tackling right now?
I think it's climate change, because it's like it's a race against time and people aren't realizing it. If you put the facts in front of them, I think then they begin to see that yes, maybe we have to do something about it, but somehow it still doesn't strike the heart. And while it's just an intellectual thing, there won't be a shift. But when something touches your heart, then you know that yes, you have to make a beginning and start with something new. So I think climate change is the big issue of our time currently.
And what do you think is the underlying problem underneath that?
Materialism, and that goes for everybody across the world, not just one part of the world, but whether you're Annex 1 or Annex 2 countries, that's the language they're using now. But materialism and forgetting that we have inner resources within ourselves, and we've forgotten that there can be love, there can be joy, there can be happiness within. And when we connect with ourselves through silence, through meditation, then we're able to not want to have more, which is what has been the basic issue of the problem.
It seems like there's a huge divide between rich and poor currently, and that it's only widening. But this sort of catastrophe we're facing might be an opportunity to bring everybody together, because you know you're not going to save one country without saving all of them.
Right. Yes, you see, every time you hit a watershed, it's like people have to rethink, and you have to start looking at what's going on and seeing if there can be something that we can change to put things right. And trying to do things on an external level hasn't been very fruitful, it hasn't been successful. And so I think it's making people realize that there's an inner change that we can bring about that can perhaps make a difference. And yes, whether I'm in one part of the world or another part of the world makes absolutely no difference anymore. We're going to be impacted by climate change wherever it is we are. But also, although on one level, yes, it's the industrialized nations that have created the situation, but today everybody in the world is contributing to that again. And so the change has to be an inner change by all of us.
What particular problems do you think India faces environmentally?
I think we're facing climate change. As I mentioned to you, we've had unseasonal rains come this year around Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, that whole area of the western coast. So we're facing that. We're facing desertification in many different areas because of the cutting down of trees. Unseasonable climate has been happening. But also I think probably what's going to come that's going to impact mostly is going to be as the mountain snows fail and there's no longer the fresh water supplies coming from the rivers, from the Himalayas, now that's going to hit people really, really hard. And I think that that maybe is going to be a moment when it's not possible to shift things at that point. We have to realize this today and understand what we can do now.
Well, what does the future look like for India if things don't get turned around?
Drought, famine, lack of water supply, and how do you survive without these things? Food, water, these are the basic essentials of life. And so I think that, you know, climate change is a theory for some people, but in fact it's not. It's a reality that's going to hit us in terms of our survival, and the change has to happen within our consciousness today. One other thing I want to mention, I've talked about the greed and the aggression that we've had against nature, and to simplify our needs and bring about the transformation in that. Vegetarian diet, for example, that can bring about a major contribution to climate change. We can really have a very positive lifestyle if that happens for everyone. But also the other thing is just the impact of sending out vibrations of peace. You know how if I'm angry or I'm afraid, it's infectious and other people around me get angry and afraid also. But if I'm peaceful, it's possible to impact other people around me. But also, our vibrations of peace can impact nature, and nature can become peaceful, harmonious, and work cooperatively with humanity if we send out those vibrations to the world.
How do you think we can bring, you know, everybody together? Like, how can we galvanize humanity to try to make this change?
We're beginning to see the impact in terms of the disasters multiplying. Every year there's more disasters, but also there's a higher intensity and severity of those disasters. And I think this is making people think, well, what is it that's going on? And is there something we can do? But also I don't think that the majority of the world have to understand instantly. Maybe they won't. But it does take a minority, and if a powerful minority understands these things and says that yes, this is what I'm going to do, that minority can have an impact on the majority.
If there's one thing you'd want the general public around the world to know about what's happening to the environment and what to do about it, what would it be?
I'd say just understand that my thoughts of aggression are creating the aggression that nature is showing human beings today, and understand that what you give out is what you receive. And so stop violence, stop aggression, let there be peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything you think we should ask?
Maybe you could tell us more about how you came to this sort of level of consciousness in yourself. Like, is this something that you were brought up with, or how did you find it in yourself?
Good question.
Please.
When I was 18, I was growing up in London, and I became aware of many different issues that I was facing. The way the West thinks, the way the East thinks, and at that time the permissive society had just begun. So I was seeing different possibilities for my life, and I didn't know which direction to go in. And I was fortunate, I came across meditation, and I understood that silence, connecting with my inner being, allows my conscience to develop to a point where I could understand for myself what it is I need to do. And I think this is why in a world that's very, very fast today, people don't give themselves space. They don't make time to just reflect and be aware. And so my hope is that as people give themselves that time for reflection, then they'll see what's going on and how it is we can bring about a change in the self and impact the world outside.
Is there one thing you could say to the developed world that seems to be in here not wanting to make any changes or any concessions, despite the fact that the developing world is the one that is sort of paying for the problems?
The reality that it's one world. It's not 2 or 3 different worlds. It's one home, one planet that is the home for the whole of the human family. And if there's things that begin to happen, it won't affect one part. Whatever happens is going to impact our home for all of us together.